what's going on, guys? So by now, you have already heard that the new Iron Man is going to be a woman. What? Also, she's black. Are you fucking kidding me? And that is how stupid people react to change on the internet. Also, Marvel, where the hell is my brown Avenger? In all seriousness, you guys have already heard about this unless you've been living under a rock for the last 2 months. The new Iron Man is going to be played by, I said a woman, but it is actually a 15-year-old girl named Riri Williams. She is a genius that goes to MIT and basically recreated an Iron Man suit on her lunch break. Now, she will be going by the name of Ironheart and not Iron Man because obviously she is not a man, she is a young woman, unless Marvel is going to be hella fucking progressive and have her have a sex change during the comics run, which would be really crazy and kind of awkward, but it happens in today's world, so, you know, I'd give you a thumbs up there, Marvel. Anyways, the reason why I want to talk about Riri Williams becoming the new Iron Man is because what does this mean for the future of the MCU? Now, if you don't know by now, the MCU is all of Marvel's properties connected together, so the movies, the television shows, and the comics. Now, a lot of people don't like to count the comics because they're so far ahead and they have rights to certain characters that they don't have rights to in the movies. Well, in reality, the comics are actually the blueprint for everything else, which is obvious, but some people would argue against them being part of the connected universe because of things such as like Age of Ultron, where they just basically did their own thing with that title of the comic and it had nothing to do with the actual comic. The movie and the actual comic were very separate from each other. So some people would argue that the comics are not part of the MCU. Personally, I don't feel that way. I think that the comics are the blueprint for the MCU, and like I said, with events like Secret Wars, and there's going to be an event later on this year, or early January, I believe, where it's going to be Inhumans versus the X-Men, and apparently they are going to kill off the X-Men in the comics, and this is just because they don't own the rights to the X-Men anymore because Fox has them. You're never going to see the X-Men in the movies until Fox is like, cool, you can use them, like Sony did with Spider-Man, or unless Marvel just gets the rights back fully. So they're like, why the hell are we going to keep writing these comic book characters if we're never going to be able to make movies of them? So I think that's just the easiest way for Marvel to kind of like put the X-Men in a corner and Fox kind of like, look, we're not going to make comics about these characters anymore, so you're going to just be able to go off old material. You're not going to be able to make any new material. So yeah. Do that or give us our rights back. It's kind of like, you know, it's just kind of like an up yours. Like, if you're never going to give us back, we're just going to stop writing about those characters altogether. To get back on track, the reason why I brought up Riri Williams is because what Marvel did here with this big move of making the new Iron Man a young woman is they just showed you the future of the MCU. If you haven't went to your local comic shop lately and seen the Marvel section of said comic shop, then you haven't noticed that a lot of their superheroes are starting to be really, really young. I'm talking about teenager young. You have Miles Morales, you have a young Miss Marvel, you have a young Nova Corps character that I know nothing about. You have a young Cyclops, and I believe all of these characters are going to be in a new series called Marvel's Champions, which I'm hearing is getting like a lot of praise right now. And of course you have Riri Williams, who is taking over a huge role in the MCU as Iron Man. Iron Man is one of the leaders of the Avengers, and this is huge. I'm pretty sure I'm missing out on a bunch of other characters that are also really young in the MCU comics right now. The point I'm trying to make right now is get prepared for the MCU to become younger. If you don't believe that idea, it's already happening with SpiderMan Homecoming. SpiderMan Homecoming cast a teenage Spider-Man, something that hasn't been done in the Spider-Man movies before. They cast a real live teenager to play Spider-Man, and all three of what will more than likely be a trilogy are there. It's all going to take place in high school, so every character in that show is going to be young as well. All of those characters in that Spider-Man movie also grow up to be certain villains or heroes in the Spider-Man universe, and they're all young characters. The Russo brothers have already came out and said that Infinity War Part 1 and 2 are going to look very different from each other. A lot of people feel that in Infinity War Part 1, something big is going to happen that may cause us not to have a lot of our core original Avengers anymore. That's true. A lot of other people are believing that Part 2 of Infinity War, and we know it's not going to be called Infinity War Part 2 or anything like that. It's going to have a different title. A lot of people feel that it might be titled New Avengers, and we're going to see Captain Marvel, we're going to see Black Panther, we're going to see Spider-Man, we're going to see a lot of the new characters from Phase 3 and 4 in these movies, and they are going to be the new core Avengers. But I think in Phase 4 and possibly Phase 5, they are going to introduce the younger characters that you are starting to see in the comics. Here is my big reasoning for that, because look, What has the MCU done for the last 10 years? They have dominated the box office. These movies have brought in so much money, and Disney and Marvel do not want that fucking money train to stop anytime soon. But unfortunately, like the comics that you can keep writing the same story over and over and over, and people are going to keep reading it with the same face and characters, you cannot do that in the movies because those people that are playing those characters age and they don't look the same after 10, 20, 30 plus years of playing the characters. So when you have characters like Robert Downey Jr. that are already in their 50s, Chris Evans who's in his mid-30s, Scarlett Johansson, when you have all of these characters that are aging and may or may not want to keep playing these characters forever, you need to think of how you're going to evolve and change your universe to keep it going, because the one thing Marvel does not want to do is they don't want to reboot this universe. They want it to keep going on. They want to have Phase 5, Phase 6, Phase 7. They want to keep making movies all within the same universe, and they don't want to reboot at all, which is something more than likely like DC. The DCEU will probably reboot itself in 10 to 15 years, no matter if they make all the movies that they're currently slated right now, because they're not doing something like Marvel, where Marvel is changing all of its comics and its heroes to just evolve and have people know these characters now and then be able to put them in movies later because they already had comic books with them. That's not going to happen with DC. And I don't think DC needs to do that at all, because those characters are so iconic and classic that they can just reboot them and people are still going to go watch those movies. I personally have no problem with that. But the MCU doesn't want to do that. They are just this core machine that's going to keep on turning, and they are going to keep making movies, and this universe is not going to get rebooted, and they're going to go with younger characters, younger in their comics, so you'll grow up with them, and when you see them in the movies, you're gonna be like, oh shit, that's Miss Marvel, and oh shit, that's Miles Morales. You're gonna see all of those characters eventually in the MCU, and they're probably gonna be casted young, because if you cast somebody at 15 or 18, barring any crazy thing that happens to their career, Disney and Marvel can ride those actors and actresses for 30 to 40 plus years in the MCU, and they won't have to change those characters at all. It's fucking genius and a smart move to do, because you cast them young and people are just gonna grow up with them. Like, look at freaking Wolverine from X-Men. He has been playing Wolverine for 18 years. I said Wolverine, I meant Hugh Jackman. Basically, he is fucking Wolverine. Hugh Jackman has been playing Wolverine for 18 years. He has been Wolverine since I was 10 years old. So Marvel wants to do that with their characters. They want Tom Holland to be Spider-Man for the next like 30 years if he wants to keep playing the character, and they will probably just back up dump trucks of money to make him keep playing Spider-Man. Now, don't get it twisted. That doesn't mean that we're not still going to have Captain America, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow, and Iron Man, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. Fuck, I just know them as their characters now. That doesn't mean that those characters are going to go away, because they might go into like smaller roles where they're mentors of the newer ones. Just imagine a badass movie like 10, 15 years from now, where all of these characters are so much older, and we have the new Avengers already, they're all younger, but the old school Avengers come out because maybe there's somebody bigger than Thanos, or there's, maybe Thanos is even bigger and stronger, or there's a whole army of Thanoses, you know what I mean? Like, just a bunch of the craziest Marvel superheroes, supervillains ever. Just imagine the new young Avengers and the older Avengers fighting side by side. That would be an epic fucking movie that they could do down the line, or whatever, if they wanted to, like with them in smaller roles, whatever. That would be something that they could do in the MCU and would be great, and it's just more badass content that fans would get. But so don't think that the older heroes are going to go away. As you introduce these newer characters, you can actually make the movies more dramatic by killing off the older characters, stuff like that, especially if they don't want to play these characters anymore for the rest of their career. You know what I mean? There's a bunch of factors when it comes to actors playing movies, but everybody wants to get into these big blockbuster movies because it's just a big-ass paycheck if they keep coming back and back. Another reason why they're not going to just go away and they're going to go with a full-blown young audience is because people like me, I'm excited for SpiderMan Homecoming, but watching a teenage movie is not really something I get excited for. I'm not a teenager anymore. I am an older guy. I'm still like a dork and kid at heart. But when you're watching like a teenage movie, like based in today's world, you're kind of just like, all right, that's kind of weird. I mean, what, I don't get it. It's just really weird, and you're kind of like, I don't really care, just show me more Spider-Man. I mean, you can watch stuff like, you know, if any of you guys have already seen Stranger Things on Netflix, like that is a solid show, and it does deal with kids that, I don't remember if they're in high school or not, but it deals with young kids, but it's based in the 80s, and you know, older people would be like, oh, I remember that shit, or I remember this, and like that's how it was when I was a young kid. So you can get away with things like that watching older, like, you know, younger audiences, but the Spider-Man movies are going to be based in today's world. So like, I don't know how I'm gonna feel watching just teenagers superheroes. So if you give me Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and Scarlett Johansson in these teenage movies, I'm totally gonna go watch them, because I'll be like, all right, somebody I can relate to, because that is what it comes down to in movies. You gotta have somebody you can relate to in all of the audiences, and that is why the Marvel movies are so good, because they're jam-packed, but they're also kid-friendly, so it pays, you know, freaking homage, and it gives everybody something to relate to in those movies. All in all, expect the MCU to get younger. These are just my thoughts on it, but I feel like that is exactly where they're going. They're building up these new characters in the comics, and you're eventually going to see them in future movies after they do the, you know, Captain Marvel 2 and Black Panther 3 and all of that. Like Phase 6 and 7, you're probably going to start seeing these younger characters come in, and they're going to build up with those characters for the rest of, you know, my lifetime or whatever, is exactly how I feel it's going to happen. But I want to know what you guys think. Do you think that the comics are mirroring, that the movies are going to mirror the comics, and that those characters eventually are going to be in the MCU? Or do you think you are one of those people that you feel like the comics are doing their own thing, the MCU is going to do its own thing? Let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. Guys and gals, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with all your Marvel buddies. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all things nerdy and geeky on this channel. As always, guys, I am your host, JUICEbox. Remember, when you wake up in the morning, ask yourself something. Have I had my daily dose of juice? See you guys next time. Bam!